Welcome, my name is Jon Spooner. I'm the Director of Human Spaceflight Operations here at the Unlimited Space Agency. Welcome to UNSA's virtual HQ, the Space Shed! Give it up for the Space Shed! Thank you for joining us for this very special broadcast today. We are celebrating 20 years of continuous habitation of the International Space Station. November 2000, when I was just a boy. Well, I was a man. I was a young man. I was a youngish man. And at that time, the Expedition 1 was launched. You can see I haven't done this for a bit. There it is. Pressing the buttons. Expedition 1 was launched, taking NASA astronaut William Shepard and Roscosmos cosmonauts Sergei Krikalev and Yuri Gudzenko on a Soyuz spacecraft to the International Space Station. At that time, look, made up of just 3 modules. And then last week, the 16th of November 2020, when I am still a youngish at heart man, a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket launched Expedition 64 in the new the Dragon Crew 1 spacecraft, taking NASA astronauts, there they are, Shannon Walker, Vic Glover, Mike Hopkins, and JAXA, Japanese Space Agency astronaut Soichi Noguchi, to the now 16-module International Space Station, where they joined 3 colleagues already up there to live and work together for the next 6 months. Now, the International Space Station is undoubtedly one of humankind's most extraordinary achievements, both in terms of collaboration and, of course, engineering. And in just a moment, we are going to be joined by my special guest, someone who knows a lot about the International Space Station. We're going to be talking about the past, the present, the future of the International Space Station and human spaceflight. But before then, you know I don't do this alone. It is time to bring in my co-host. He's my best friend, and he was actually a previous visitor to the International Space Station as an unofficial member of Expedition 46. Would you please give it up for UNSA's first astronaut, Mini Jon? Mini. That's a lot of smoke there, dude. How are you doing? Yeah. Whoa, you really are excited today, aren't you? It is going to be cool, right? Oh, no. I'm pretty sure they do believe that you really went to space. Yeah, okay. He wants me to show you the photographs of him in space. Where are they? Oh, look, here we go. There you are in space. I know, it's pretty cool. And that is you there with Tim. Yeah, Tim, who you took with you to the International Space Station. Tim actually arrived a week after Mini Jon, so therefore became the first non-plastic British astronaut to visit the International Space Station. He did really well, didn't he? I was about to say, so a little bit of housekeeping before we get into stuff. We're running a new competition today where you can win a virtual visit from me and from Mini Jon for your school or your home ed group, and we will tell you the story of how we hacked our way into space. High fives indeed. All you have to do to be in with a chance to win this amazing prize is to say anything in the chat. I can see there's plenty of you already in the chat. So anyone that's already made a comment in the chat live today, you are entered into a lottery. And at the end of the show, our missions and communications officer, Javaria, who's looking after you all over in the chat there, she's going to pick a winner at random. So when I say anything, don't say anything rude, obviously, because I'm so sorry about him. It is not funny. So just say anything, but not anything like Mini Jon would say, and we'll choose a winner at the end. Okay, let's get on with it, because it is your bedtime soon, and I want to make sure that I don't miss the Bake Off final. No, we've had this conversation. It starts after your bedtime, so you can't stay up. I'm really sorry. They're the rules. Okay, all right, stop it. Look, fine. I will wait until tomorrow. We'll watch it on Catch Up together. Happy? Okay, fine. So it is time to bring in our very special guest. This is a man who has flown on 4 Space Shuttle missions. He flew as a test pilot in the US Navy, where he rose to the rank of Major General, before then serving as the head of NASA from 2019 to 2017. Would you please give it up for Charlie, the man, the legend, Charlie Bolden!
How you doing, John? Hello, Mini Jon.
Hey, Mini Jon. He's saying hello to you. There, he says hello. He also says he really loves your exploration suit that you're wearing there.
Yeah, I wore my exploration suit. I don't. When I go and speak in schools nowadays, kids say you're not really an astronaut because you don't have on your astronaut suit. Well, I don't have an astronaut suit anymore, but this is my new exploration suit because I have taken to bicycle riding. That is my favorite, like a bicycle. So I ride a road bike, and I just came back a little while ago, and I thought I would keep my road exploration outfit on. And as I told John earlier, I wanted to emphasize to the kids the critical importance of things like gloves, winter and summer, and also to my safety goggles. Most importantly, my mask for this COVID era, and then my protective helmet. So you now have seen all of my space equipment that I wear.
Well, I think, if you need a new spacesuit, Charlie, you can borrow mine anytime.
I'll try to do that.
Okay.
I might have to do that.
Look, thank you so much for taking the time today. I'm really enjoying, by the way, that you're always, as far as I'm aware, always just off a bike. We spoke very briefly yesterday just to test this was working. You were a bit sweatier then.
I was. I cleaned up a little bit.
Or maybe you've not been working as hard.
I have to admit, this is, I only have one red exploration suit, and I wanted to be colorful. My other one that I wore earlier was just plain black, and I figured that wouldn't do it. I can't compete with your orange launch and entry suit.
I'm very bright,
but give some color.
It's because people worry that I might get lost, and I need some looking after. Look, Charlie, thank you so much for your time. Look, you piloted or commanded 4 Space Shuttle missions, all before, and we're celebrating the International Space Station today, so all those missions were before the ISS was built. But particularly as the head of NASA, you were very closely involved with a lot of missions to and around the ISS. What are your feelings about the ISS?
I am a huge fan of the ISS. I am not the only person, but I think I was among the first to call for the ISS to be nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. And I say that in all earnestness. As you pointed out earlier in your introduction, ISS, we just celebrated its 20th anniversary of human habitation a few weeks ago, but the ISS has not gone through a second without humans on it over that last 20 years. So I tell people who have kids and grandkids, if they're under the age of 20, they have not taken a single breath when the International Space Station wasn't occupied by humans. Always at least one Russian and one American, and almost always with a multinational crew. And we managed to continue to work cooperatively when we don't get along down here on Earth. And so that's why I think ISS is the perfect model for the way that humans should work here on the planet, and therefore should win the Nobel Peace Prize.
I think that's very cool. Can we nominate it? How do you get nominated for a Peace
I
Prize?
understand it's been nominated, but I don't know the process.
I have an idea for. I agree with you about the space thing, and I've got a little mini mission where I would like to see the next G8 summit held in space on the International Space Station, because then I think maybe some of our global leaders would get the perspective that they need from space in order to solve some of the problems we have down here.
We could actually do that now that we have we've got at least one American vehicle that's capable of going now and carrying a crew of 7. We could actually get a full complement of representatives from the G8 nations on board for a short period of time for a G8 summit, and then we would safely bring them back down to Earth. It would take either 2 vehicles or maybe one of the SpaceX crew Dragons and a Soyuz, but we could get them.
Well, I think the important thing for many of us would just to see some of those leaders launched into space. I think it could be optional about whether or not they're returned safely.
Not going there.
Look, we've got some questions from our brilliant cadets who are really excited about meeting you and asking these questions for you. Cadet Moonrock and Team Leader 42, this is aka Annabelle and Amanda, hiya. They have emailed us. You can email us, hello@unspaceagency.earth. They've emailed us to ask, Charlie, if as a pilot, if you could fly one spacecraft from any era, what would it be?
Shuttle. The space, and I am partial because it is the only spacecraft I've flown, but I would choose the Space Shuttle because it's a really piloted vehicle. We didn't fly it physically going into space because it was safer and more efficient to let the computers take care of everything in that dynamic environment. But we flew manually all the way from what we call entry interface, when you get back into the atmosphere until you land. We physically flew it and then landed it on every one of its 135 missions. So that's my favorite vehicle.
That would be your favorite. So you don't fancy a ride on the Crew 1?
Oh yes, I did. You didn't ask me that. I fly on any vehicle, and in fact, I am now. Hopefully, no one will take offense, but I am now a 74-year-old young man, and I had an agreement with the late Senator John Glenn that like him, I could go back to space, but not until I turned 77. So one of the reasons I ride my bike and try to stay in shape is because I've got 3 more years until I get to 77. And then I'm hoping someone's going to invite me to fly either on the Crew Dragon or on the CST-100 by then.
What's the reason for why 77?
Well, that was John Glenn's limitation. I'm already approaching the octogenarian stage, but we have a data point of 1 for a person who exceeded the age of 70 to go into space that we know of. We need more data points. So I would be the second data point for a person who was a near octogenarian.
This is so cool.
So that it is critically important that I fly in space. I'm eligible now, but I'll wait until 77. But I want any of my friends from NASA who are listening, or any of the private carriers, you have a volunteer, 3 years from now at the age of 77, in keeping with the late Senator John Glenn's, I don't want to say his wishes, but his agreement with me.
I'm really excited for you. And in fact, Mini Jon has just mentioned, because he asked Sonny as well, who I know obviously you're friends with, who's going up next year on the Starliner. But he asks everyone, if you go, can he come with you?
Yes, he can. In fact, I think it's only appropriate that he fly with an American now that he's flown with a Brit. That Tim didn't take him.
Well, he packed him.
Who took him to space?
Well, Mini Jon flew on one of the resupply missions on the Cygnus Orbital 4 about a week before Tim. That's what I mean about. So, strictly speaking, MJ is the first British astronaut to have visited as a crew member of the International Space Station. I'm not sure how Tim feels about that.
I would be more than happy to have him fly with me.
Amazing. Mini Jon, we've got you flights with Charlie Bolden and Sunita Williams now. Sick.
Right. He could come, he could rack up some flights here pretty quick.
He's so keen to. We've got some more questions for you. This one came also by email from Cadet Bessie, who is age 10. They'd like to know if you had to isolate away from your family before your missions to space, and if so, did you find it hard? Because Bessie's had to isolate with her family this year, and she's found it, in her own words, jolly difficult.
Yeah, is it Betsy or Bessie?
Bessie.
Bessie. Bessie, I did have to isolate away from my family. Back in the shuttle era and in the early part of the International Space Station era, we isolated for 10 days. So we went into what was called, we went into the crew quarters, and it was for health stabilization. You may say, why 10 days? Well, at that time, most known childhood diseases, which is what we were worried about, measles, chickenpox, those things, had an incubation period of 7 days. And so we put ourselves into quarantine 10 days prior, so that if anybody came down with anything, we would know it and they would be able to be replaced on the crew or just wouldn't fly. With COVID-19, we've actually extended that. I think many of you may be familiar with the 14-day quarantine period that's recommended when you go from one country to another, or here in the United States from one state to another. And so we put our crews in isolation, deep isolation, about 14 days, 2 weeks prior to their mission. So Victor Glover and his crew, that's what they did. It is incredibly difficult, Bessie, because you don't even get to see your kids who are 17 and below during that period of time. And if you're like me and you're a real family person, you just want to help them with their homework or do other kinds of things. You can talk to them on the phone, but they can't be anywhere close to you, and they can't come to the crew quarters. Adults, back in the old days, they would let them come in once they had been medically screened and they were felt to be okay. But today, I'm not even sure that they do that with COVID. And it's really, really difficult to be away from your family.
That sounds tough. That's a great answer as well, isn't it, Bessie? You couldn't have more information than that. She's got a sister, Lilia, Cadet Lilia, who's just 8 years old, and she wants to know if you think space has a smell, and if so, what does it smell like?
Lydia, I have been asked that question earlier this month, and I'm going to tell you what my astronaut friends tell me, and I think the ones who have an answer are people who have done spacewalks. And you don't smell anything when you're out in space because you're in your helmet, you're in your own spacesuit that has its own pressurization, 4 pounds per square inch. And I don't know what that is in in metric stuff, but anyway, 4 pounds per square inch. So it's a little spaceship, and so you can't smell space. I doubt if you'd be able to smell anything anyway if you were able to take your helmet off, which you don't because you'll die. But space is essentially a vacuum. In other words, it doesn't have too many molecules out there, and they're not too many close to each other. So there's no way for your nose to get molecules that carry any kind of aroma at all. So my guess is there will be no odor in space. But flown astronauts who have come back from spacewalks and have brought equipment back in with them say that there is this burned metallic smell. And they think it comes either from the bombardment by radiation of the tools and the other things that have been on the outside of the space station. And that's what causes it to impart this odor of a burned metallic smell to it.
That is a very, very cool answer. Thank you. Because she was wondering as well about, and then how would you smell? Because you have a space hat on, but you've answered other questions. It's not space.
She got the right answer.
Yeah.
Her answer is the right answer. You can't smell because you got a space hat
But
on.
it's a space helmet, strictly. You heard what Charlie said.
True.
Thanks, Charlie. This is from Cadet Maria, who is 10. She's emailed a couple of questions about your experience of being an African-American working in the United States. And it kind of breaks my heart in some ways that there's a 10-year-old asking this question, but it's been a year for it. Yeah. She wanted to know, how did racism affect you in your career, and did it make you stronger? I think that's a really interesting question there.
Maria, you're a lot smarter than you think. Racism, and I'm not going to try to go into long definitions and everything, but when we choose to dislike people because they differ from us because of their race, and racism anybody can exhibit racism. It's not just something that whites exhibit toward blacks or blacks exhibit toward whites. anyone can exhibit racism or hatred for somebody who is not like them. For the person who's the victim of racism, as I was growing up in segregated Columbia, South Carolina, I could have easily just let it get me down and say that, and use it as blame for things that I was not able to do. But my mom and dad were school teachers, and they motivated my brother and me, and they taught us that we could do, in spite of the segregated school system in which we grew up, they taught us that we could do anything that we wanted to do if we were willing to study really hard, to work hard, and not be afraid of failure, not be afraid of asking for things, even though we knew that we might not get it. So being the victim of racism can motivate you to excel, and I hope that's what it did for me. It motivated me to always try to be the best in my group. It motivated me to ask for things that, even though I knew, or I was pretty sure I was not going to get them, I asked to go to the Naval Academy. I asked for an appointment to the Naval Academy when I was in high school, although I knew that my state senators and my congressional representative were not going to appoint me because I was an African American. But I also went to the President of the United States, Lyndon Johnson, after the death of President John Kennedy. And I wrote him a letter and said, Mr. President, I know I'm not eligible for a presidential appointment, and I know you can't appoint me, but I really need help. I want to go to the Naval Academy really badly. You and I talked when you were vice president, and I was thinking you might appoint me. You can't now, but help me. Never heard from him, but a Navy recruiter came and visited my house. And later, a former U.S. federal judge, a retired federal judge, that President Lyndon Johnson sit around the country looking for qualified Black and Hispanic young men to go to the Naval Academy. And I ended up getting an appointment, not from my own home state, but from Congressman William Dawson in Chicago, Illinois. So the racism that I faced was not a hindrance. It was a motivation. It was something that pushed me, drove me to excel. And hopefully that'll be the same for you.
That is a really excellent and generous answer. Thank you, Charlie. Mario had a follow-up as well. Do you know what? I just wanted to actually, because a lot of our young cadets might not know, you talked about segregated America there. Can you just tell us briefly what you mean by that? Because I don't think some of our cadets will know.
Yeah, segregation is the process of separating things, mainly people, from each other based on something that you feel makes them different. In the United States, when I was growing up, people believed that the races, white and Black, should not mix, should not go to school together, should not live in the same areas of town, should not be able to go to church together, shouldn't mix at all. In fact, we had, when I went downtown with my mom and dad to shop in a store, there were drinking fountains, and one set of drinking fountains said white only, and the other said colored. So you couldn't even drink from the same drinking fountain. So separating people out on the basis of some difference. We used to segregate women from men, or we separated Indians, Native Americans from other Americans. We separated the Japanese out in internment camps during World War II because we thought they represented a threat to us. So the process of separating a group of people out from everyone else because they're different is called segregation. And it was the law of the land when I grew up. So that was the way that the United States, that's the way it was in the Constitution, believe it or not.
That's I think it's important for some of our younger cadets, like I say, to understand that this is in living memory, and the lived experience of someone that is intending to go to space in the next 2 years.
They're living through it today. I'm not sure whether your cadet who asked the question may be experiencing little snippets of it, because unfortunately, we see racism rear its head now and then today. But my encouragement to them is use it as a tool to help them excel, to help promote studying harder, working harder, so that they can try to become the best, even if they don't. And then the most important thing is never, ever, ever let anybody tell them they can't do something. Don't ever be afraid of failure. Just try it anyway. And if you fall down, get back up and try it again, over and over and over again.
Take that advice, people, if you need it, from someone that has lived it. She did then want to, a final question on this is, how did you feel then when, after growing up and living through that and encountering that, and when you became the first African American to be the head of NASA?
To be quite honest, I was incredibly proud, but I wasn't proud because I was an African American. I was proud because I had an opportunity to work for the first African American or Black president of the United States, President Barack Obama, who I admired, and I grew to really just greatly respect and love, if you will, because of the person that he was and the couple that he and the First Lady, Mrs. Obama, were. But I was, it wasn't because I had overcome racism or anything. It was just because I was privileged to represent this country and to my country, the United States, and to give back for the things that had been given me just for the right of being an American citizen.
Well, she'd also like to know, then final one from Maria. I think she's quite keen. Are you still in contact with President Obama? I think she's looking for a connection.
Oh, I wish I were. Everybody asks that. I was not in the close circle of people. I became the NASA administrator. I have no idea how, to be quite honest, because I did not know President Obama. I did not work in the campaign. I've never really been a political kind of person, so I wasn't one of those animals. I think I had a champion who knew President Obama, who really pushed for my nomination, and President Obama, after I met him once for a very brief meeting, decided to nominate me to the Senate of the United States, and I had my hearing, and I was accepted. I communicate back and forth via Twitter and stuff like that, but he doesn't. I'm not somebody that I think he would say, "Oh yeah, old Charlie Bolden."
Do you know what? I would bet he would be a little put out. Actually, he'd be like, "I know Charlie. He's a hero of mine." You've spoken previously as well. I've heard or seen you having spoken about how, because you had two deputy administrators. By the way, you guys need a better name. I'm the director of human spaceflight. Administrator. You could call yourself anything.
Nobody gets it. Nobody has a clue. And I agree with you. I mean, administrator. It's like, for people who are wondering, it's like I was the president of NASA or the chief executive officer. So in a private company, I would have been the CEO, the chief executive officer. And my deputy would have been, if I were the chief executive officer, my deputy would have been like the president of the company or an executive vice president.
But no, administrator. But you had your deputy administrators, you had two during your time as administrator, were both women, Laurie Garver and Dava Newman. And you spoke after resigned from NASA.
By law.
Yeah, by law, just a few days after the election or the inauguration of the current sitting president. But you spoke after that about your disappointment that you hadn't been succeeded by a woman. And we've just seen now the first woman and the first woman of colour elected to be vice president come the new year. We've got Sunny Williams, who's going to be has previously been a commander on the International Space Station, is going to be commanding the Boeing Starliner next week. We've got Jeanette Epps, who is going to be flying as the first Black African-American woman to be a crew member on the International Space Station next year. How do you feel about the pace of change with regards to seeing more women in space?
I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed at the pace of women and minorities becoming members of the family of flown members of that society. Victor Glover, I think you and I talked about it a couple of days ago, but Victor Glover and I are kindred spirits, disappointingly so, in that Victor's flight is coming 26 years after my last flight, which means there's been a quarter of a century between the flight of the second African-American pilot in the space program and the third African-American pilot. A quarter of a century. That's unacceptable.
That is wild.
Victor Glover will only be the third African-American pilot in the space program when there are 500 and some odd people now who have gone to space. Equally disappointing is the fact that there have not been that many women who have occupied either the pilot's seat or the commander's seat. So they're although Well, I think we're equal for commanders,
What do we
but
need
they've had somebody fly a little bit more recently than Victor flew behind me.
and what needs to, because there are these positive signs. It has been a really wild
Yep.
4 years,
Yep.
frankly, but what do we need to achieve the sort of change that you want to see?
We need for your cadets to keep doing what they're doing right now. We need for them to mature from 10-year-old cadets to 17-year-old high school graduates to 21, 22-year-old college graduates with technical degrees who aspire to get into the space program and become scientists, engineers, doctors, you name it. But for some of them, to put their names in the hat to become astronauts. And today, they don't have to be a NASA astronaut or an ESA astronaut or a Chinese astronaut. They can actually go to the private sector and become corporate astronauts. Virgin Galactic has their own cadre of astronauts who fly suborbital flights, granted, on Spaceship Two right now. I think Blue Origin will probably have a small cadre of their own astronauts. Boeing, the first commander was set to be Chris Ferguson, a Boeing astronaut. So they can now, people like Maria and others can go to the private sector and become astronauts because there are now test pilot schools in the private sector. Whereas when I came up, there were only two in the United States. There was the U.S. Naval Test Pilot School in Patuxent River, Maryland, and the U.S. Air Force Aerospace Test Pilot School at Edwards Air Force Base out in California. Today, there's a private test pilot school in Mojave, and my guess is there are others all over the place. So lots of opportunities today. So your space cadets need to study really hard, work really hard, and not be afraid of failure. Don't let anybody tell them what they cannot do. And if they don't get selected the first time, don't worry about it. One of my favorite astronauts applied 11 times before he was finally selected.
That is, yeah, we hear that a lot. Don't give up, people.
Don't give up.
Are you allowed favorites?
Everybody's allowed favorites. I don't necessarily have favorites, but if you ask me, it may be one of these rare things that I have a favorite.
Yeah. Who's your favorite?
You mean my favorite astronaut?
Yeah.
Oh, my favorite astronaut would have to be the late Dr. Ron McNair, because I wouldn't be sitting here today were it not for him embarrassing me into applying for the space program. I never dreamed of being an astronaut. I never had a desire to be an astronaut. Although I grew up in Columbia, South Carolina, on Saturdays going to the theater and watching Buck Rogers, and I loved watching Buck Rogers walk out to his spacecraft, climbing it like a normal car or a plane or something, and flying off to Mars and coming back. But I never thought I could do that, and I never even believed it. And even after I became a test pilot, I still didn't harbor any thoughts that I would become a NASA astronaut. And I met the late great Dr. Ron McNair in the year that he was selected to be an astronaut and was in his training. And before he went back to Houston, he asked me if I was going to apply for the program. I said, "Not on your life." And I mean, I was serious. And he looked at me with this incredulous look. For the kids, that's a look of, "Are you out of your mind? What do you mean, not on your life?" And he said, "Why not?" I said, "They'd never pick me, Ron." And he looked at me again, just quizzically, and said, "That's the dumbest thing I ever heard. How do you know if you don't ask?" And so I will tell your cadets, you don't know unless you ask. So don't be embarrassed into putting your application in. Don't make somebody embarrass you into doing it like I did. So use my example and don't do the dumbest thing anybody ever heard by not applying.
And I'm guessing you're passing that on now as well. You use that example that Dr. McNair did to you to then be pushing other people and to look to the people around you and go, why aren't you applying?
Hopefully so.
Yeah. You were just talking about going to the cinema and watching Buck Rogers. You've always spoken about STEAM, which I love. You know, you're ahead of your time. That you hear a lot of more talk about it now, which is putting the art, the art into science, technology, engineering, and maths, and that you really like including artists and art as a vital part of developing the space program. What do you think is vital about artists working with scientists and engineers?
I think artists and designers, we even use the term now STEAMed, or STEM plus AD, which is science, technology, engineering, math plus the arts and design. And the design comes in because the spacesuit you're wearing is really old. The design of it is. The spacesuit that American and our partner astronauts wear is very old. The Orlan spacesuit that the Russian astronauts wear is very old, and they're bulky, and they're actually not very good for joints in the shoulder. So we are looking for designers nowadays, artists and designers, to give us new, more efficient spacesuits. The SpaceX suits, those were done by scientists working in conjunction with artists and designers to come up with that new stylish spacesuit. So I think it's critically important for us to use people from the arts side of the world to help us tell our story. That's not an excuse for people like me, for scientists and engineers not being able to tell the story of the importance of spaceflight, but there are people who are trained to do that and who have a real incredible capability of doing it. You're one of them.
I
So
agree with you,
we
Charlie.
need
Yeah.
people from the art side to help us tell our story even better, and then people in the design field to help us present that artistically or architecturally, or however else you want to put it, so that people understand what it is we're trying to accomplish.
I really agree. And I think there's a lot of crossover between artists and scientists. We're both, trying to get to places that we don't know or understand, often without really knowing what it is that we might find out as a result of going there. I think there's loads of crossover. I'm not going to keep you much longer because I am aware it's Thanksgiving this week.
Good. We're good.
Okay. We've got a couple of questions here from people in the chat. Thanks so much for getting involved in the chat. I'm just looking over here. We've got Layla. Cadet Layla would like to know, is it true, we're going to try and do these quick fire, is it true that you get taller in space?
Yes, Layla, because gravity is overcome, your spine stretches. Gravity is not compressing your spine, and so you get taller. But it's not permanent.
That's a real shame as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. For you and
Astro Goldie's little brother would like to ask Charlie about, what is Snoopy's association with NASA?
Snoopy came into being, I want to say, after the Apollo 1 fire, long before any of our cadets were born. We lost the crew of Apollo 1 in a fire on the launch pad in preparation for their flight. And NASA wanted to find a way to reward their employees and contractors who really focused on safety and just safety of the program, but most importantly, safety of the crews. And the astronaut office went to the artist who originated Snoopy and Peanuts, Charles Schulz, and got his permission to use Snoopy on a pen that we call a Snoopy pen. And so they started presenting the Snoopy, the silver Snoopy, it's a silver pen, presenting the silver Snoopy to people who were selected and nominated by people in the astronaut office as someone who exemplified a particular focus on safety and mission assurance. And so we wanted to recognize them as a result of their work.
And that's why Snoopy is buds with NASA.
That's right.
Cool. Anya and Seren want to know, what do the stars look like when you're in space?
Anya and Seren, the stars are incredibly brilliant pinpoints of light in space. The reason they're no bigger because we're no closer, but the reason they are much more brilliant and much more and just balls of light, not a ball, but anyway, pinpoints of light, is because we're outside Earth's atmosphere. So the light coming into our eyes doesn't have to bob and weave or scintillate or actually be refracted and reflected as it comes down through the molecules of air. We just get it straight on when we're out in space. We're not looking through the atmosphere. We're not looking through a fluid. And so they're brilliant pinpoints of light. You see gazillions of stars once you get into orbit. Interestingly, when you're on that 45-minute daylight time in a regular 90-minute orbit, you're 45 minutes of daylight, 45 minutes of darkness. When you're on the light side, our sun is so brilliant that it takes away the ability of the human eye to see stars. And so the sky just looks black when we're on the 45-minute light side of Earth.
Wow. Well, as a follow-up to this, Cadet Jack would like to know, what's your favorite thing that you've seen from space?
Ooh, Jack. Ah, man, I don't, Jack, I don't know that I have a single favorite thing. Let me just give you a list. Aurora, the just the glittery lights of the northern and southern hemisphere where charged particles are getting into our atmosphere because that's where the poles are and the magnetic field lines of the shell that protects us, the magnetosphere, actually bend and they emanate from the poles. So that's an area of weakness. And as the charged particles come in, they charge up the molecules in the atmosphere, and we get that glow. So that's one of my favorites. The other is, our ocean is absolutely breathtaking. And I use the term ocean, not oceans, because Earth is a water planet. We live on a planet that is 75% water, and in that body of water, there are these bodies of land that stick up. Big ones we call continents, like Africa, North America, South America, Australia, you name it. But still, we're floating in one body of water. So, and that ocean is absolutely breathtakingly brilliant.
Cool answer, right? And if you have not seen the aurora, after we finish this show, just search up on here, if you're allowed to stay up any later, the aurora or the northern lights from space, and there is some extraordinary videos that you can watch here on YouTube.
Lights, the aurora borealis, and in the south, the aurora australis.
There you go. Every day's school day. We've got going to stay in space for one more question, and then we've got a couple about returning to Earth. Joe and Maisie Langley would like to know, what is the scariest part of being in space, or is there anything scary about being in space?
For me, there was nothing scary about being in space. My training crew had prepared us so well. And also just talking to previous space flyers in the office about their experience, I thought we were incredibly well prepared technically, such that we didn't have anything that was scary. I was anxious before each flight because you knew that you could do something wrong that would put your crew in jeopardy, and you really didn't want to do that. So if I go back to the study hard, work hard, don't be afraid of failure stuff, I had studied incredibly well or hard, but I knew that I didn't know everything there was to know. And there was no way for me to do that. So I wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to make a mistake that was going to put my crew in jeopardy. And one of the things that all my crews learned after I messed up one day by trying to do a procedure from memory was we made a rule that no one does anything, no matter how simple, without getting the procedure and following it and having someone else look over their shoulder and follow along with them, because we couldn't afford for one person to go off on their own thinking they were fixing something, and they were fixing the wrong thing. That's what got my crew in trouble in the simulator one day, and I killed everybody because fixing a problem that didn't exist. And I took a good system.
In the simulator, Charlie didn't actually kill anyone.
I didn't kill him for real. It was in the simulator.
I would find it,
but it's realistic enough that it got my attention.
I would find it so annoying if I always had someone looking over my shoulder, just making sure I'm doing it. Have you not got anything else to do?
Well, it's a team, so they weren't really looking over your shoulder. You started by diagnosing the problem. Is this really what's wrong? Let's both look at the indications, because the space shuttle was incredibly complicated, as are most spacecraft. And there are a lot of different indications of things being wrong, and you can get it wrong as to what's wrong.
Yeah, to be fair, I'm very rarely doing anything where people's lives are at stake, so I can understand why you would. Cadet Lizzie wants to know, this is about coming back to Earth. After eating space food, which I think is like normal for it, but what was the first thing you wanted to eat when you got back home? Let's say the first time you were up, what was it?
Lizzie, I thought our food was tremendous, and it's normal food. You work with the dietitians and the cooks while you're in training, and you pick your favorite foods, and they prepare them for you, and then they dehydrate them. They cook them on Earth, and they take the water out for storage. And so, like, my favorites were shrimp cocktail, I loved fish. I am a vegetable fanatic. And for breakfast, I like cereals, hot and cold. And so you'd get a packet out and you'd add 2 or 3 ounces of water to it and it would rehydrate. And then you could eat it just like you did down here on Earth. So I had really good foods that I loved, but I think I probably craved a regular old hamburger after being in space. And I wasn't there as long. People are in space nowadays for 6 months minimum. And so a lot of them come back and they're craving things like fried chicken or, hamburger or a milkshake, things like that.
Lizzie, if you're in the chat, I know you're in the chat, let us know what you would have if you were coming back from space. It's the last question from our cadets, I think, for now. But Cadet Alice, who's age 23, wonders, in your 4 flights, what was the weirdest or the hardest thing to adjust to between going up and then coming back down to Earth?
Ooh, Lizzie, the thing that took the longest to adjust to, and it wasn't hardest, was just your body getting accustomed to moving from a gravity environment here on Earth to the microgravity environment of space, where because gravity is taken away and you don't have the gravity vector for your inner ear that provides balance for us, then there is no up or down. And so it takes a couple of days for most people to adjust to having no up or down reference. The brain is an amazing, amazing instrument, because the brain works with the eyes, and after minutes or particularly days of being in space, you can be kind of upside down in terms of vehicle reference, but your eyes and your brain adjust and you learn how to read upside down, you learn how to read sideways, and after a while, you don't have to flip yourself to read something. Your body and brain really adjust to it, but that takes a couple of days. So that was probably the most difficult thing. Coming back to Earth, again, it has to do with your vestibular system. It's just, your muscles get accustomed to being back in gravity pretty quickly just by walking around and doing. And besides, you've been exercising the entire time you were in space. But your balance mechanism has to readjust and get used to being back in a gravity environment so that you don't turn pins loose expecting them to just stay out there in midair, embarrassing yourself because you're dropping stuff all over the place.
That's so funny. I mean, it must be a really strange thing. Oh,
It
did
is
it again.
A strange thing. You're really stupid. When you go around dropping pins, or people don't give you glass stuff because they know what you're going to do and they don't want you dropping glass.
They have to treat you like you're a child again. Here's a plastic
They
cup. Got one. The final thing. I've got 2 things. These are from me. One is, so what we're doing a little competition today, and it's we have these answer T-shirts, our uniform, as we like to say, and we're going to send you one, obviously, because you need some more uniform, clearly. But what's been your favourite question today, Charlie? I know it's hard sometimes. But...
Ooh, my favorite question today. I think because when asked about what's it like to be in space, I always tell people there are 2 senses that I can describe it. One is feel. That's the feel of the absence of gravity or it being overcome by the speed at which we're going around the planet that allows us to apparently float and be free. That's incredible. But the other, perhaps even more exciting sense is the sense of vision, the sense of sight that allows us to look at our planet as we have never seen it before. That perspective that you get from being in space. So the question it asked me about what my favorite sights were probably because I never get tired of talking about the way our planet looks from the vantage point of space. And it's one of the driving reasons that I want everybody, or as many people as possible, to have an opportunity to go to space, because I want everybody to see and feel what I saw and felt.
That is cool. Okay, so look, that is Cadet Jack, age 7. That was your question that Charlie Bolden, the head of NASA, has chosen as his favourite today. That's so.
You got it, Jack.
It is Thanksgiving this week, which is a very important holiday in the United States. It's been a bit of a year, right? 2020 has been very difficult for a lot of reasons for a lot of people. Okay. What are you going to... Thanksgiving is on Thursday. What are you doing? What are you going to be giving thanks for, Charlie?
Well, John, I am incredibly blessed and privileged in that our family, all of our immediate family, our two kids, my son and daughter, and then our three granddaughters, we all live pretty close to each other. So we're sort of like one big happy family, and we're able to get together frequently. So we're going to go out to my son's for Thanksgiving dinner, and my wife and I are packing our bag, and we're going to stay out there for 3 days. They live about 10 miles from us in Virginia also, and our daughter lives in Washington, D.C. She's a doctor. But I'm going to give thanks for the blessing of having an incredible family with two talented children who are making contributions to humankind, and three incredibly beautiful granddaughters. And we're going to try to find some single way that we can make life better for at least one other person who's not in our family. We love to. You can't do what we used to do. We used to love to go to food kitchens and stuff like that, and unfortunately, we can't do that this year. But just praying that others have an opportunity to be as fortunate as we are.
Well, that is
And
yeah.
everywhere I go, wearing my mask.
Yeah. Wear a mask, everyone. We shouldn't be having to say that at this stage of the year, but we are. That was a very beautiful place to finish, Charlie. Thank you so much for your time. I know that our cadets will have loved this. Mini Jon is giddy at having met you, and he's really looking forward to flying with you at some stage in the near future.
Tell him it shouldn't be longer than 3 years, Mini Jon, if I can convince somebody out there to give me a chance.
I don't think that's going to be difficult. Loads of comments coming through there saying, thank you, Charlie. Have an excellent, happy Thanksgiving. And I hope that we can stay connected and to get to speak to you again soon.
I do. Thank you so very much. And thanks to all of the cadets.
Charlie Bolden, everybody. Give it up for the man, the legend. There he goes, Charlie Bolden. What a brilliant and a generous and a fantastic and an inspiring man. So we got one thing before. I know, he's really cool, right, MJ? Before we go, we need to pick a name. So Javaria, our missions and communications officer, in the chat, you need to now spin your wheel. I'm going to put some music in as well while we wait. So like Britain's Got Talent or something, there they go. And the winner is... There's a delay as well, so it's going to take forever for you to see it. Javeria's going to put it in the chat, and whoever it is, you're going to get a visit from me and Mini Jon. We're going to tell you your class, or you can nominate someone else, another group that you're connected with. It's Layla Rosa. Layla Rosa, you get to invite your friends round to your house. We'll do the visit there, or you can do it in your school, your class, or your home ed group if that's your thing. We would be delighted to do that for you. That's so cool. If you are a winner today, please email us your contact details. We are hello@unspaceagency.earth, and keep in touch with us on any of the socials. We are at unspaceagency on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of those. And if you want to find out all the other things that you can do with us, check out our website, unspaceagency.earth. It's got all the links to podcasts, activities, everything you can do there. So now, MJ, I need you to go and put your pajamas on, please, because it's really getting very close to your bedtime. Thank you very much for doing that so well. Bye, MJ. See you later. Yeah, love you. Good night. I'll be in a minute. Brush your teeth. I'll be there in just a second. So thank you to all of the Answer crew, Javaria in the chat, to Holly doing comms the last week, to Alice and to Sarah back at Mission Control. A massive thank you to our guest Charlie for giving us his time today, answering our questions. It's been a real delight. Thank you for tuning in, for being here with us. We love to have you here, and we will see you all again for more Live from the Space Shed soon.
Up with it, up with it, up with it, up with it, up with it.